Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a profound, honestly, kind of invisible shift that is happening in hospitals and clinics right at this very moment. We're talking about the arrival of artificial intelligence directly into the exam room. For decades now, that sacred space between a doctor and a patient has been crowded by this third, incredibly demanding presence, right? The computer screen and the electronic health record. But what if a new technology could literally make that screen disappear from the conversation while still capturing every single medical detail?
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. You're a practicing physician. Your daily reality is back-to-back appointments, high-stakes medical decisions, and then just hours upon hours of charting. Now, pose this central question to yourself. What happens when an AI scribe metaphorically pulls up a chair in your exam room? To really understand the magnitude of this shift, we first have to look at the baseline problem that has just plagued the medical profession for years. For a long time, the traditional clinical note has been a massive disruption. Just listen to this reflection from a medical student during a real patient encounter. They were trying so hard to capture a comprehensive history that the interview was, well, as they put it, punctuated by long pauses filled with the sound of pen against paper. And the result? The patient, Sandy, became increasingly disengaged. Whether you're staring at a glowing screen or furiously scribbling on paper, the sheer administrative burden of capturing that medical record totally breaks the fundamental human connection.
Now, you might be thinking, wait, haven't doctors had voice dictation for years? Well, yeah, they have, but that is active dictation. That's a physician speaking directly to a machine like it's a robot, commanding it with awkward phrases like new paragraph or period. Ambient AI is an entirely different beast. It's a passive listener. Powered by generative large language models, it just sits quietly in the background and actually understands the context, the nuance, and the messy flow of a natural, unstructured conversation between two human beings.
So formally, ambient AI scribes are systems utilizing those LLMs to capture and analyze patient-clinician conversations in real time. The AI doesn't just produce some massive verbatim transcript of every and ah. It acts as a highly intelligent synthesizer, parsing the whole conversation into the standard sections of a clinical note. You know, things like the history of present illness, the physical exam, the assessment and plan. All of it neatly organized and ready for the physician to quickly review, edit, and sign.
Section 1. The clinician's reality, bandwidth, and burnout.
We all know burnout from administrative burden is at absolute crisis levels in healthcare right now. So how does a passive listener actually change a clinician's day-to-day life? We'll get a load of this number, 15,700. That is the staggering number of hours saved across 2.5 million encounters by the Permanente Medical Group following their large-scale deployment of this tech. When you scale ambient AI across a massive health system, the efficiency gains are literally transformational. Clinicians are reporting huge reductions in pajama time, which is, those exhausting hours spent typing up notes at home on the couch long after a shift is supposedly over. And this brilliantly illustrates the real magic here. By introducing a highly advanced machine into the exam room, the visit actually becomes more human. As one physician noted, it gives them back the one single resource they simply cannot manufacture: cognitive bandwidth. Without the mental load of desperately trying to memorize details for a note, the doctor can actually spend more time looking their patients right in the eyes, listening deeply, and synthesizing complex, 15-year medical histories. But, it's not a perfect magic wand. Actually, scratch that. It's definitely not magic. There's a very distinct minus for clinicians, as captured in this quote from recent qualitative research. A major friction point right now is the loss of the nuanced physician voice. Doctors spend years crafting a very specific way of communicating subtle concern or maybe reassurance to referring specialists through their notes. The AI, while incredibly efficient, tends to be pretty blunt. It gets the facts down perfectly fine, but it often lacks the subtle, specialized tone that a physician normally uses to convey those complex clinical sentiments.
Moving on to Section 2. The patient's perspective, trust and transparency.
Of course, we have to look at this from the patient's point of view, and patients have highly valid fears regarding data privacy and surveillance. This quote from a recent JAMA Network Open study cuts right to the chase. The idea of a smart device recording a patient's most vulnerable moments, potentially in partnership with some third-party, for-profit tech company, that naturally raises alarms. And let's be real, absolutely none of this works if the patient sitting on the exam table isn't fully on board.
The data here tells a really interesting story. Context is everything when it comes to patient comfort. While nearly 2/3 of patients are perfectly fine with an ambient AI running during just a routine physical exam, those numbers drop sharply when the topics get sensitive. 35% of patients say they would actively censor themselves during mental health discussions. That jumps to nearly 41% during sexual health discussions, and over half would hold back information regarding illicit activities. This is absolutely crucial, because if a patient is censoring their symptoms, the diagnostic process breaks down entirely.
But here is the critical balancing fact. Trust is the absolute prerequisite. When health systems prioritize transparency, when doctors just take a moment to clearly explain what the tool is, that it's only a tool, and then ask for explicit consent, patient refusal rates completely plummet to less than 0.5%. At the end of the day, patients ultimately value a doctor who is paying full attention to them, provided their data boundaries are respected.
Section 3, Educating the Next Generation, Synthesis versus Automation. That brings us to the third person who is often standing in the academic exam room, the medical learner. Because if AI fundamentally changes how notes are written, how on earth does it change how future doctors are trained? Writing a clinical note isn't just about record keeping for a medical student, it's a vital cognitive exercise. As one internal medicine physician pointed out, the very act of writing forces the brain to synthesize raw, messy symptoms into a coherent illness script. If an ambient AI simply hands a finished, polished note to a second-year medical student, we risk short-circuiting that active learning process entirely. They miss the mental reps.
So how are medical schools adapting? They are actively designing entirely new paradigms. At Stanford, for example, they're deploying tools like AI Click, which is an app that listens to a trainee present a case out loud and then acts as a coach to evaluate their critical thinking habits. They're also using things like Clinical Mind AI, a high-fidelity voice simulator where students can practice verbal interviews in a totally low-stakes environment. The goal here is to use AI as a dynamic second brain to challenge the student, explicitly to prevent the major risk of automation bias, which is where learners just blindly trust the machine and lose their own analytical independence.
I really love this quote from a recent piece in the New England Journal of Medicine. It beautifully states, "In this new terrain, teachers are learners too." We are experiencing this fascinating inversion of expertise right now, where young trainees might actually be way more adept at prompting AI than their seasoned attending physicians. Educators are having to navigate this huge paradigm shift in real time, literally co-managing the uncertainty of AI alongside their students.
All right, Section 4, the evidence thus far, pluses and minuses. So the crucial point is, where does the balance sheet actually stand right now? Let's bring all of these perspectives, the doctor, the patient, and the learner, together to weigh the evidence we currently have. It's a complex picture. On the plus side, the empirical evidence shows undeniable reductions in documentation burden, hugely reclaimed cognitive bandwidth, and objectively improved efficiency metrics. But most importantly, it restores that vital eye contact. On the minus side, there's the loss of the clinician's unique voice and those very valid data privacy fears. There are also risks of automation bias for students, and we really have to consider the practical equity issues. Like, how well do these tools actually perform with heavy accents or non-English speakers in real-world busy clinics?
These raw human reactions from the JAMA study really ground all the data points we just went over. Whether it's a patient saying they like the idea of AI summarizing just so their doctor actually pays more attention to them, or a doctor worrying about the legal liability if the AI records a complaint that didn't get addressed during a super short visit, this perfectly captures the messy, real-world friction of adopting such a transformative tool.
And honestly, this is just step one. The research clearly indicates that the horizon of medical AI is moving way beyond just transcribing notes. We're transitioning toward what they call patient-centric decision intelligence. This means integrating all those unstructured clinical notes, wearable sensor data, and social determinants of health to create algorithms that act not just as scribes, but as ethical, explainable clinical partners that can genuinely assist the physician in real-time decision-making.
Which leaves us with this vital question to ponder. As AI inevitably becomes a permanent listening fixture in our clinics and hospitals, how do we ensure it remains a tool that strictly enhances, rather than replaces, the profoundly human art of clinical reasoning, connection, and empathetic care? It's a delicate balance that healthcare will be striking for years to come. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the technology that shapes our world.